everybody, welcome back into Cherry Picking. Yes, Cherry Picking is back. Fantasy hockey is coming back. The NHL season starts in a little over a month and a half right now. Just like last year, the videos and the show this year will be sponsored by FanDuel Canada, North America's #1 sportsbook. Just updated their brand new version of the sportsbook, at least for Canadiens. They're over to V2 now, which means it's just way more shit to bet on and a lot more going on for the NHL season. But today's video, we're looking at 7 breakout candidates. These are either young guys that have the potential of kind of crossing that barrier this year, or players that are on new teams, really good situations that could find themselves giving themselves a breakout, or maybe almost like a bounce back season as well. So 7 guys to get into. Let's get into it. All right, so the first guy we're going to be talking about is Juraj Slafkovsky on the Montreal Canadiens. His ADP right now is just outside the top 100, so definitely a guy that's going a lot higher than obviously last year. I think at the end of last year, you really saw what this guy is capable of doing in the NHL. He finished the season with 20 goals and 30 assists at 50 points. A lot of his points, I would say, came within the last 2 months of the season, playing alongside Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki. Obviously, they acquired Patrik Laine this year. Kirby Dach comes back to full strength. But I think you'll still see Slafkovsky on that top line, playing on the top power play as well. I think we'll be able to see him score 25-plus goals this year, but I think it's his playmaking that we saw, especially in the second half of the season on the power play, whether it may be playing with Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield. You have that ability of passing it to a guy who has an incredible shot. Now you have Patrik Laine as well, if he ends up is playing some ice time with Patrik Laine too. A guy that's going to contribute in every facet of fantasy hockey too. He's obviously a massive body, 140 plus hits, 70 plus blocks. Those are numbers we're probably going to be used to seeing Juraj Slafkovsky at for the rest of his NHL career. And then I think we also saw his swagger kind of develop last year, especially at the end of the NHL season, and also at the World Championships playing for Slovakia. So Juraj Slafkovsky definitely high on my list and a lot of other people's list as a top breakout candidate for the season. All right, the second guy we're going to be talking about, a guy who moved around last year a lot and just had a disappointing season. That's Elias Lindholm. Now on the Boston Bruins, played with 2 teams last year in the Vancouver Canucks and the Calgary Flames. Finished the season with 15 goals and 29 assists for the good part of his career, especially more recently. We've seen him finish in the 60 to 80 plus point range. He had 82 point season with the Flames, with Carolina, had a 70 plus point season. I think we're going to see him get back to those numbers this year. Playing alongside a guy like David Pastrnak, who's scored 40 plus goals, I want to say in 3 straight years, and will probably continue to do that, is going to help him. And he's someone who's more of a playmaker as well. How these lines are going to shake up might be interesting to see. Like, is Zaka going to move over to the wing now that they have Lindholm as that first center? Charlie Coyle as that second center, and a little bit more depth now with some of the younger guys that they have. Matt Poitras, another guy that I think could break out this year, but Lindholm is a guy I think we're going to see get back to that 60 to 70 plus point range and going to help your fantasy hockey team win. Obviously really good in the face-off dot as well, so can contribute there for him. But Elias Lindholm playing as that first center on this Boston Bruins team, I think we'll see a massive point jump this season. All right, the next guy we're going to be talking about is Viktor Arvisdsson on the Edmonton Oilers. His ADP is right around 162. You also have another acquisition by the Oilers this offseason in Jeff Skinner and also Vasily Podkolzin. But I mentioned these 2 guys because I think these 2 guys, or either one of them at least, will definitely be playing alongside Leon Draisaitl, maybe both of them, and then maybe lucky for the other one is either going to be playing with Connor McDavid. But interesting to see kind of how Chris Knobloch shakes out his lines for this season, especially when you look at the preseason, so we can get a jump ahead to figure out who's going to be the best draft. But Viktor Arvidsson is a little tough to sell every people on because he hasn't played a full season in what feels like 4 or 5 years. Whenever he was playing for LA, whenever he was playing for Nashville, he was putting up very solid numbers. Always been a pretty efficient scorer, can kind of do it all as well, plays in a lot of different situations. So one of the reasons why I really like him, when you pair a guy like that with Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid, you're going to see those point jump or the point jump be insane, I would say. You're looking at a guy like Zach Hyman. I'm not going to say he's going to do the exact same thing, but it's something that I think we could see Viktor Arvidsson do. And Jeff Skinner, also a likely candidate to do that. Obviously, a relatively disappointing season last year, but still finished with 46 points. I know the season prior to that, he was, more in the 80-plus range, playing on that Buffalo Sabres team, but now has an even better opportunity playing on this Oilers team, a team that just went to the Stanley Cup Finals. I think either of these guys are going to have breakout season. You can kind of pick your poison here. Whoever can stay the healthiest will obviously have more points points and a better fantasy hockey season. But at this point right now, I'm going to put a little bit more stock in the fact that Viktor Arvisdsson could be a guy, more of a playmaker, that second-tier playmaker for this Edmonton Oilers team. The next guy we're going to be looking at, JJ Peterka on the Buffalo Sabres, a guy that kind of had a mini breakout last season, and I think we're going to see him go from that 50-point range even to that 70-plus point range this year. I think Buffalo's offense is really going to bounce back after last year. It seemed like they couldn't have a full, healthy unit on the ice. Also, we saw Tage Thompson regress, Jeff Skinner, and I think this year you're just going to see a lot of guys kind of blossom. There's a couple guys on this team that I think are going to break out. JJ Peterka being a guy that you could say he broke out last year, but I think we're going to see him, get into that even 70 to 80-plus point range. Looking at his stats from last year, too, look at his expected goals. His expected goals was 22 for the season. He had a shooting percentage right around 12%, which is somewhere I think he can kind of revisit and even maybe get higher if he continues to play how he was and is playing on that top line with Tage Thompson and Alex Tuch as well. One thing that kind of stuck out to me for Peterka last year, even though he was continuing to produce, Granato didn't play him a whole lot. I feel like we'll see him play even more ice time this year. He averaged about 16 minutes per game on the ice. I think this year we'll see him in the 17 to 18-minute range as he continues to contribute in other facets of the ice for the Sabres team. He was fifth in ice time last year. There's guys like Jordan Greenway played more than him, plays obviously a little bit different role. But Jeff Skinner was also that other guy that was playing about 17 to 18 minutes a game, and I think now with Skinner gone, just opens up another avenue to play as much as you possibly can with Tage Thompson and Alex Tuch, because that's where a bulk of this offense is going to be generated from. You have the Dylan Cousins as well and Zach Benson, I also think is going to have a good season. But JJ Peterka would be awesome to see, and I think it's very probable to see him in that 60 to 70 plus point range, obviously after last year with almost 226 shots on goal. All right, another guy on the Sabres that I really like, Bowen Byram. Obviously got moved at the deadline last year for Casey Middlestat, another guy that JJ Peterka will be taking ice time from now that he is in Colorado. But Byram, I think, fits on this Sabres team really well. I think he was generally excited to be playing and getting moved to this Buffalo team. Could give him a more elevated role. Obviously, playing that Colorado team, it's hard to kind of find your footing, I'm sure, when you have Cale Makar and Devin Taves playing that top pair. Obviously, Byram was on that same level as, let's say, Sam Girard last year and always has been, and has still been able to produce. If you look at the last two seasons, he's had 20-plus points. He's had 10-plus goals. He played 42 games in 2023 as their fourth D and still managed to finish with 25-plus points and 10-plus goals there. You saw as soon as he got traded to Buffalo, I think he scored in his first two games. I think we'll see a very similar style of play from Byram on the Sabres team as the number one or number two offensive defenseman. Obviously, you can't forget about Rasmus Dahlin, but I think playing with Dahlin on that top pair gives Byram, the ability to really focus on his offensive game, because can be a little bit of a liability defensively sometimes, but when you're playing with a guy like Dahlin who can execute on breakouts, is really strong with the puck and not making too many mistakes, obviously gives you a little more confidence to kind of do what you can do on the offensive side of things. Like if you look at his numbers in the WHL, this guy has the ability to put up 40 to 50 plus points, and I think that's what we'll see this year if he plays a full healthy season of 82 games. So really like Bowen Byram to break out right now. His ADP is right around 145. I think we're going to continue to see that decrease as the season starts. Another guy's opportunity has fully opened for him in Vancouver, and that's Nils Hoglander, member of the Vancouver Canucks. Last year had 24 goals in 80 games played. But the biggest thing for me, this is a guy that started his NHL career, I believe, in the 21-22 season and came out pretty hot out of the gate. I remember actually having a small wager on him to win the Calder Trophy at really, really long odds, and he shortened very quickly as the season started because he had 4 or 5 goals in that first month and then kind of tailed off. The year prior to that, he only played 15, 20 games. This year got back up to 80 games, but there's just so many guys producing on this Vancouver Canucks team that it was kind of hard to maybe find his footing in that top 6. But this year, I think we will firmly see it. I would think he's going to be playing on that top line with JT Miller and Brock Besser. I think Elias Peterson will be playing with the two newbies on the team with Jake DeBrusk and Daniel Sprong. That's how Daily Faceoff kind of has it pegged right now, and I could see it going like that, but definitely something to keep your eye on. But for Hoglander, 9th in ice time last year amongst forwards, which I think is insane. His talent level is definitely a little bit higher than that. He was only playing about 12 minutes per game. Now you obviously have Andrei Kuzmenko not there anymore. Bo Horvat got traded in the middle of the season. A couple other pieces leaving like Elias Lindholm, I think gives him the opportunity. And if you look at when he actually was playing with JT Miller and Brock Besser last year, he played 115 minutes plus with these two guys as a line combination. They had an expected goals for per 60, about 3.5, which is very, very solid. Highest of any line on the Canucks who played at least 100 plus minutes together. So obviously Rick Tocchet sees something in this threesome for this year again, and I think we'll see Hoglander playing on that top line, maybe given a little bit more of an opportunity to start the season as well, and then if it's not working, Tocchet can kind of reevaluate from there. But I think all the opportunity in the world is there for Hoglander. His shooting percentage was relatively high last year, about 20%. I don't think that's like the Kuzmenko effect here, who scored like 40 goals on a 28% shooting percentage and then completely disappointed the season after and is now in Calgary. I don't think the same thing's going to happen. I think those numbers are a lot higher than where Hoglander is. So really like Hoglander to kind of develop this year, and interested and curious to see kind of how the season finishes out for him. All right, the last guy we're going to be looking at, a defenseman as well. He does not have an ADP, which means I don't think he's really getting drafted. And that's Daniil Miromanov on the Calgary Flames. Last year was on Vegas. He was a part of that Noah Hanifin trade that sent Noah Hanifin over to Vegas. And we really saw him play pretty well with the Calgary Flames, playing on that top pair for most of his time in Calgary, the last like 20 games or so of the season, playing alongside Mackenzie Weegar, which I think really helped, and also helped him build his case to be, again, on the number one pair this season for the Calgary Flames, who are going through, I would say, like a mini rebuild at this point with how many big defensive pieces they traded off last year to acquire some draft picks and some younger talent like Daniil Miromanov. Really interesting case for this guy as well. Like, he started playing in the QMJHL as a forward. He was playing in the Q as a forward in Bathurst, went back to Russia and was playing the KHL in Sochi, where Igor Larionov, former NHL player, Hall of Famer, and coach now in the KHL, told him to switch to defenseman. So he switched to defense, went back and played in the queue for Moncton, ended up scoring, I think, 32 points in 38 games, still as a defenseman, then went back to the KHL and played a full season in the KHL for Sochi, led all defensemen in points and goals, and then got signed by the Vegas Golden Knights. And impressed in camp, like Vegas for the last 2 years, the defensive unit has just been stacked at the top. And obviously some injuries have maybe helped him play a couple games, but also had some really solid numbers with Henderson in the AHL and then last year with Calgary as well. If you look at his offensive numbers with Calgary too, scored 3 goals last year on the season. And when he was playing with Calgary, he had 40 of his 46 shots were with the Flames. So clearly on the Flames, his role was elevated. That's not crazy to say, but his offensive game as well. And looking at him and Weegar play together as a unit, they weren't a liability in the defensive end, which is why I could see Huska kind of putting them together as that top pair again this year. And I think it's safe to say he'll have more than 7 points, considering he only played 24 games last year. But he was still averaging about 20 minutes per game. If he continues to play alongside Weegar and, accesses that offensive side of his game where he used to be a forward and plays like that this year for Calgary, I think there's all the opportunity in the world for him to produce a 30-plus point season, which at this point in fantasy hockey is quite valuable for defensemen, considering if you're in those deeper leagues, especially a guy that's not even on a lot of people's radars right now is going to be playing 23 to 24 minutes. So I think Miromanov at this point is an absolute slam dunk. You get him right at the end of your drafts and will be one of those top breakout candidates. Someone like Elias, a little bit older, granted. I think he's 27 now, but I think this guy will have the shock value of like a Pavel Minchikov last year on Anaheim. All right, thank you guys for tuning in. Let me know what you thought of the first episode of Cherry Picking this season. Thank you to FanDuel Canada. As always, tons of preseason videos to come out over the next couple weeks and months. Really excited for the NHL season this year, and we'll see you guys in the next video.